The former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Marietta Brew Appiah-Opong, has in a statement denied that officials of aircraft manufacturing giant Airbus paid or attempted to pay millions of dollars in bribe in exchange for contracts. Ghana's involvement in the issue that has led to Airbus being slapped a £3 billion fine by British court is in connection to the purchase of a C-295 military transport aircraft between 2009 and 2015. The issue came to light during court proceedings in which Airbus admitted 5 counts of failing to prevent bribery, using a network of secret agents to pay large-scale backhanders to officials in foreign countries to land high-value contracts. My colleague Kojo Yankson joins me with the details of this developing story after this news desk report.
Documents filed in a UK court by prosecutors from the UK Serious Fraud Office show that a number of Airbus employees made or promised success-based commission payments of approximately €5 million to one highly connected intermediary who facilitated the bribes and the purchase of the planes. It found that contrary to Section 7 of the Bribery Act 2010, between July 1, 2011 and June 1, 2015, Airbus failed to prevent persons associated with it from bribing others concerned with the purchase of military transport aircraft for the government of Ghana. The bribe was intended to obtain or retain business or advantage in the conduct of business for Airbus. Between 2009 and 2015, an Airbus defense company engaged someone only identified as Intermediary 5 as its representative in respect of the proposed sale of 3 military transport aircraft to the government of Ghana. We do not know who Intermediary 5 is, but there are clues provided by the UK Serious Fraud Office. They describe this individual as a close relative of a high-ranking elected Ghanaian government official. He is also described as a UK national with no prior expertise in the aerospace industry. A number of Airbus employees knew that Intermediary 5 was a close relative of the government official. The name of the government official was also not disclosed, but the UK Serious Fraud Office observes that this official was a key decision maker in respect of the proposed sales. False documentation was created by or with the agreement of Airbus employees in order to support and disguise the payment of bribes. The payments were intended to induce or reward, quote, improper favor, unquote, by the government official towards Airbus. Payments were eventually stopped due to the arrangement failing the due diligence processes required by the liquidation committee. A French court announced last Friday that Airbus will now pay $4 billion in fines to settle the global corruption investigation. The settlement with the authorities in France, Britain and the United States closes 4 years of investigations into accusations that Airbus, between 2004 and 2016, used intermediaries to bribe public officials in numerous countries to buy its planes and satellites. The episode had tarnished the company's reputation and forced it to make sweeping changes to top management. It also allows Airbus to avoid criminal charges that, if proved, could have crippled its business by prohibiting the company from seeking public contracts in Europe and the United States. Airbus will be subject to 3 years of, quote, light compliance monitoring in France, the nation's anti-corruption agency said on Friday. There are calls already here in Ghana for the Economic and Organized Crime Office to investigate these revelations and prosecute the government official or officials who benefited from these corrupt payments.
Well, my colleague Kojo Yankson has joined me in the studio. Good morning, Kojo.
Hello, good morning.
Very interesting developments. So apart from what Komla read to us about what he has gathered so far, are there any other sticking points for you?
Well, there are a number of them. There's a document from the district court from the United States District of Columbia, which has also been looking into this same matter. They have issued some details of their own.
Yeah.
And their narrative adds a bit of information to what we have. For example, that document indicates that the government official one, referred to in the British documents, actually approached Airbus first. Okay, so the government official approached Airbus and said, you know, we'd like to buy some aircraft, at which point the intermediaries, the brother of the government official and his friends, were brought in. They set up a company and they became the go-between in this arrangement. So the question is, what was the purpose? Why did Airbus feel there was a need for an intermediary when they already had contact with the government official? We've also been trying to figure out who these individuals might be, and that has been an interesting exercise.
It seems like quite an investigation going on, even on social media.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And there are some clues given. You know, we can state what the clues are from the documents we have, and then, you know, the public can decide if they know who it is or not. Right. So what we know from the American document is that this government official engaged Airbus very soon after he assumed office in 2009.
This is government official 1?
Government official 1.
Okay.
Or the government official, to make it easier. He contacted Airbus very soon after he assumed office in 2009. He is also described as somebody who is influential in decision making when it comes to the purchase of aircraft.
Okay.
And so we can make some calculations from there. Who would be influential in the purchase of aircraft? Well, according to our constitution, there is one organization or body that is responsible for budgeting and so forth when it comes to purchasing aircraft for the military, and that is the Armed Forces Council. Now, I can read a little bit to you about what the Armed Forces Council is mandated to do. It says, and I quote, "The Armed Forces Council shall advise the President on matters of policy relating to defense and strategy, including the role of the armed forces, military budgeting, military budgeting and finance, administration, and the promotion of officers above the rank of lieutenant." So right here, the Armed Forces Council is responsible for military budgeting and finance. So this is the body that will determine which aircraft to buy, who from, and so forth. Now, the Constitution also says that there shall be established an Armed Forces Council which shall consist of A, the Vice President, who shall be the chairman; B, the ministers responsible for defense, foreign affairs, and internal affairs; C, the Chief of Defense Staff, the service chiefs, and a senior warrant officer or its equivalent in the armed forces; and D, 2 other persons appointed by the President acting in consultation with the Council of State. So for the detectives out there, all you have to do is, first of all, find out who was the Vice President at the time, because that would be a member of that committee. Find out who the ministers for defense, foreign affairs, and the interior were at the time, and then who the Chief of Defense Staff and so forth, and all those people were, and you would have the full composition of that body. Then ask yourself, which of them were were elected government officials.
Okay.
And once you finish doing that, you can go further and ask which of them has a brother who is a UK and Ghanaian citizen and so forth, and see where that takes you.
I see. Very interesting so far in terms of trying to find out, you know, who is who, and some of the deductions have been absolutely hilarious. But it is quite a serious issue, isn't it, Kojo? So, okay, moving away from all of that, we know that the UK court as well has fined Airbus for doing this. There was an argument made by the head of ASEPA, and his argument was that we're focusing a lot on what the government of Ghana has done, but should we not be focusing on what Airbus actually did, you know, as in coming here, trying to look for business, paying out bribes, and all of that? We haven't really spoken about that, have we?
Well, we know that the President has referred this matter to the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and the Office of the Special Prosecutor has broad powers that include the prosecution of private entities that engage in corruption here in Ghana. So if the Office of the Special Prosecutor wishes to look into that, they have absolutely every power to do so.
But the NDC have responded. I know you have the statement.
I do indeed.
Will it be possible to just bring that to us as well?
Absolutely. Let me get that for you now. Now, the NDC issued this response yesterday evening, and it was issued on a letterhead that has the NDC logo on it. But interestingly, it was signed by a person who is not an executive of the NDC. I'm talking about the former Attorney General Marietta Brew Appiah. Opong. Now, I want to fetch that document for you so that
okay,
I can
whilst
read it
you try to look for it, I have the documents that came on later on in the evening from the NPP, or not from the NPP, sorry, from the government, and that's the one where they actually told us about the fact that they have asked the special prosecutor to look into it. But you have the NDC statement.
I do now, yes. So like I said, it has the NDC logo on it. It says, press statement, former Attorney General rebuffs reports on Airbus bribery claims. And it's not a very long statement. I'll read it all. It says, and I quote, our attention has been drawn to media reports about a deferred prosecution agreement, DPA, entered between Airbus SE and the United Kingdom Serious Fraud Office in respect of the practice of Airbus SE in paying commissions to its agents and the use of those commissions. The reports alleging that Airbus SE paid bribes during the administration of the President John Evans Atta Mills and John Dramani Mahama are false, misleading, and do not reflect the approved judgment. Indeed, the approved judgment of the Crown Court of Southwark approving the DPA between Airbus and the UK Serious Fraud Office does not allege that any payment was made by Airbus to any Ghanaian government official. It is therefore a gross distortion for the media to conclude that officials of the Ghana government between 2009 and 2015 were bribed or paid any commissions by Airbus for the acquisition of the CASA C295 aircraft. And then it is signed by Marietta Brew Apia Opong, former Attorney General and Minister for Justice.
Okay, and more on that statement, my colleague Mamavi Owusu-Abaji has been speaking with the General Secretary of the Opposition National Democratic Congress, Johnson Asiedu-Ketia. He believes that the alleged corruption is a diversionary tactic.
You know my view about this. Whenever MPP has its back on the wall, they just want to divert the attention of the nation, and that is what they are doing. Is their attempt to divert attention of the nation from this electoral register and the other burning issues. So it is much ado about nothing.
How do you draw this conclusion when the case was not even tried? This was not a Ghanaian court. This is a UK court. How do they have control over that?
Can I finish? I'm not sure the UK court called anybody from Ghana to testify or invited anybody from Ghana to do anything. So the Attorney General, as at that time, has issued a statement that what they are putting out there in the newspapers is false. And as she's preparing to come and react to it. So that gave me the confidence that, well, these people are at their diversionary best. So they just want something. You know, if your cow gets lost, and you may be so desperate that in looking for that cow, you'll be looking into a hen coop to see whether a cow is hiding in the hen coop. That's what they are doing. They are very desperate. But it brings some very interesting development. I'm told that the president has ordered special prosecutor to go and investigate something.
That's actually a statement that was issued from the presidency.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought the president said that public institutions are not under his control and that they are to do their work. So the president didn't see or hear about excavators that have been vanished. Or he didn't hear about the tricycle, containers load of tricycles that have vanished in this country.
What's your point? Were you expecting that he would make reference?
If he is the one who orders people to investigate, there are sufficient evidence about wrongdoing now happening in Ghana. I thought he was quiet because when you tell him, he says, I'm not the person who orders investigation. But now that he has proven that he orders investigation, he should please go and order investigation.
I mean, is it an order or this is
the vanishing excavators? Because you can't have 50 or more than 50 excavators vanishing into thin air, and then there is an investigator in Ghana who can be ordered by the president, and the president is not worried. You cannot have container loads of tricycles and bicycles vanishing completely in this country.
But this is...
the accusations are even coming from his appointees, and nobody is ordering investigation.
I was just going to say that this is a matter that also involves other countries. That has even gotten Malaysia to get one of its ministers to resign. They're also probing into this matter.
I'm saying that, look, let's stick by what the Attorney General has promised, the former Attorney General. She will come out. But I'm saying we are open for any investigation, including investigation of the vanishing of excavators and then the vanishing of container loads of tricycles and so on. So let us be up and doing in fighting corruption.
Okay. I'm sure you've heard about intermediary 1 and 5. That's been making the rounds a lot in terms of who the identities of these persons are. And people are speculating that one could be the president.
I don't answer questions based on speculation. I'm not a speculator. So I answer questions based on facts. Otherwise, you'll be going there, then you heard somebody say something, then you say, I'm going to answer. Somebody says something, you say, I don't answer questions based on speculation.
But if you look at all the clues in these judgments...
There are no such clues. The point I'm making is that go and listen to Marietta Brew. She has the answers to give you. She has issued a holding statement, and she has indicated that in the course of the week, she will come out to explain what went wrong. All the things you are saying, it is. I hold the view that MPP is just trying to find something, to divert the attention of the nation. Listen, the CPI rankings that are done, they are not done based on information here alone. They are done based on information within the international community, how people engage with your government and so on and so forth. The times that they were talking about corruption, about this procurement, those were the days when the CPI was highest. We had the highest score in Ghana.
Perhaps this had not been uncovered.
No. Corruption, people who engage government in contracts, their reports also feature in the CPI rankings. I was not in government. The person who is in government is coming to give you a response. But to be jumping out there and be giving names and nicknames to people and so on, it shows the government that is desperately finding mud to spill on his opponents when that mud will not stick.
So finally, this is a statement that the NDC as a party associates itself with. What has been issued by the former Attorney General?
Which statement?
The statement issued by the former Attorney General, because it comes on an NDC letterhead.
This is an interesting thing. When we were complaining about the eminent persons issuing a communique on Electoral Commission letterhead, what was the response in the press?
You tell me.
Yeah, the press said that, well, they didn't have a letterhead, so they had to use Electoral Commission letterhead. So what is different about this? Marietta Brew upon appear can person occupying a certain position of privileged knowledge about a set details of a particular contract.
I guess this is coming up because she's not an official. She's not a party executive.
She's a party member. Why? She's a high-ranking party member. And she has issued a letter. Are you interested in learning from somebody who is privy to the information, or you are just interested in asking somebody who knows nothing about what has happened, so you can go and announce that, well, when we ask this person, he says he doesn't know about it.
So the question really was, does the party associate itself with the statement that's been issued?
There is somebody who has signed. Go and ask about the details. And she has promised to give you the details. So why are you beating about
So no, I think that's clear. We're just asking if the party associates itself.
NDC person. the accusations that is being branded around, were they accusing NDC as a political party?
And that was Mamavi Owusu-Abuaji with the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia. But just a quick tour around the world about how this story is being reported. So Deutsche Welle is reporting this as Airbus fined millions in global bribery settlements. Disclosures on Airbus corruption network have been made public after a nearly 4-year probe into sales to over a dozen overseas markets. The multinational paid large-scale bribes to score high-value contracts. Okay, well, the BBC is reporting Airbus settles corruption probe for 3.6 billion euros. Airbus says it has agreed a settlement with French, British and US authorities for 3.6 billion euros following lengthy investigations into allegations of bribery and corruption. And Al Jazeera is reporting Airbus agrees to record $4 billion settlement to end bribery probes. Okay, Kojo, so obviously this is a worldwide conversation. Maybe not so much what's happening in Ghana, because similar happening in Malaysia, Sri Lanka as well. But obviously the air bribe bit is going on all over the world. Listening to Johnson Asiedu Nketia, and I think his quote that's really got to me is when your cows get lost and he starts looking in hen coops, looking for them. But what do you make of that interview?
Well, it's fascinating. I spoke to him as well just before Mamavi did that for radio, and he said pretty much the same thing. And I asked him in the same vein, I said, you know, when you call it a diversion by the government, how do you suppose the government managed this diversion? These are reports coming out of 2 courts from other countries that have been looking into this matter for over 4 years.
Yeah.
So how did the government orchestrate all of this just to coincide with the Electoral Commission debate so that it can divert attention? Well, he kind of moved away from that position after that. Yes, he had a diversion of his own at that point. So he moved away from that, and he was simply saying, look, this statement was issued by Marietta in her capacity as former Attorney General. Speak to her about it. Again, I asked the same question that Mamabi was asking. So is the party not aware of this or not a part of this statement? And he said, you know, she wrote it, you know, in her capacity as former Attorney General.
Well,
so speak to her.
I guess in the up and coming days, we'll find out exactly what it is, the position that the NDC is saying, because this did happen under their watch, right?
Yes, and that's the reality of it. In 2011, some of these contracts were signed. So it is a fair question to ask, who were the officials responsible at that time, and indeed, what happened to these monies that were paid. And it ought to be easy to trace these things. You notice that in the report from the UK, they traced the money. There was another company brought in, referred to as Intermediary 8. And they were brought in to circumvent the fact that the brother was recognized to have a close relationship with the customer, who was Government Official 1. So they brought in another company to circumvent that. So the money was paid to that company, and they were able to trace payments from that company's accounts into the accounts of the company set up by the brother and his friends. So we ought to be able to investigate and find out, where did that money then go? Once it went into that account, who got paid, so that the investigation can expand a bit more and we can understand who benefited from these irregular arrangements that Airbus refers to and agrees were bribes. Okay.
Well, a little earlier on, I was telling you about the fact that the government had released a statement late last night, signed by Eugene Ahin, Director of Communications, and this bit that I'd like to read to you. He says, President Akufo-Addo has taken notice of the judgment and its implications and has referred it to the Office of Special Prosecutors to collaborate with its UK counterparts to conduct a prompt inquiry to determine the complicity or otherwise of any Ghanaian government official, past or present, involved in the said scandal, and to take the necessary legal action against any such official as required by Ghanaian law. But co-chair of Citizens Movement Against Corruption, Edem Senanu, is questioning the capacity of the Office of the Special Prosecutor to investigate this matter.
Preamble our title with new citizens. I was wondering whether I had a new.
Okay, new citizens.
No, it's just Citizens Movement Against Corruption. When you added the new, I was wondering.
Okay, I've removed the new. Citizens, stand, please.
Well, I mean, first of all, none of us anticipated a report of this kind from the UK, and the sums involved. The period involved, I mean, it's the kind of thing you don't want to affect your national image. I mean, it's not good when we start having our name as Ghana branded in all these things as a country where bribes influence the kind of procurement we get involved in. So it's utterly dissatisfactory for something like this to go on. Ideally, the names of those who were party to this ought to have been put out there. I take note of the recent statement by the NDC saying that the final judgment appears not to mention Ghana. I think until we have that final judgment available for all of us to look at it, we ought to take very seriously the allegations and do whatever it takes to uncover who was behind this. I don't think it is enough to just suggest that the final judgment, because we know there was some kind of negotiated settlement. So we want to find out for ourselves as a country what went on and who was behind it. And if there are individuals or other groups involved, they should be held culpable.
Okay. Now, if you look closely to some of the contents of the statement, also or the reports from the Serious Fraud Office, it indicates in the statement of facts, the identity of the individuals concerned have not been included because there are ongoing investigations in respect of a number of individual suspects in this jurisdiction and abroad. Now, the Serious Fraud Office of the UK continues that it is appropriate to protect the right of suspects to a fair trial. They also continue, some of the individuals involved in the relevant conduct are based in jurisdictions where there are human rights concerns and the death penalty exists for corruption. And if you read further, he says the identities and positions of relevant employees and other persons referred to in the statement of facts have, however, been made known to the Special Prosecutor of the UK, and they will do some comparative analysis and investigations and make their conclusions. Is it possible, knowing that when it comes to graft issues involving negotiations, names and assigns of elected government officials are used, especially in the developing world, by big multinationals, whereby there could be a possibility that we don't have complicit these named, elected, or high-holding public officials involved?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, these things that happen, as it were, undercover, I mean, they are not things that are in the public space where one can see who was involved. They are prone to the likelihood of some people probably being mentioned who may not directly be involved or otherwise. So that is why a thorough investigation is important.
And Kojo, just before you go, inquiring minds want to know what are the possible charges that could be brought against this said government official, one, and the penalties.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the Office of the Special Prosecutors Act 959 highlights a number of offences that the office can charge, people with, and one of them is using public office for private gain. And that is classified as a criminal offense. Okay, so the possible penalty for that is that you can either, and Section 179D points it out. Penalty. A person convicted of an offence under any of the offences specified in this chapter is liable on conviction to a fine of not less than 5 million Ghana cedis or imprisonment not exceeding 10 years or both. There are also the lesser charges of corrupting a public officer, corruption of and by public officers. That is a misdemeanor. There's also accepting or giving bribe to influence public officer or juror. That is also a misdemeanor. But then there are also a number of separate offences under the Public Procurement Act 2003, Act 663, which deal with offences constituted under the Act for which jurisdiction is given to the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Now, those come with their own separate penalties, but they could possibly apply in a case like this because it was about the purchase of aircraft.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kojiangton, for joining me with all that information.